Regular programming will not be seen tonight, so that we may bring you the following TV 13 special.
Today, every country has different standards for low-level radiation protection, and our country has several standards set by various agencies.
By the time I start that drive, I have a picture in my mind of 2 or 3 things on the news that I think I should think about, that in some way or another have some impact on how I might do my job. Well, I find myself wanting to use the pickup truck quite often. First, because I enjoy driving it. It has nice handling capabilities, and you sit above the traffic and you can see what is happening. And secondly, of course, living in the country, I enjoy the ability in the winter to drive with 4-wheel drive and get through the snowdrifts and over the hills.
Colby Chandler says he works best early in the morning when his mind is fresh, at work by 6:45, heading for home 12 hours later. This evening, we share the rare opportunity to talk with Colby Chandler at his home, to discuss in a more tranquil setting his personal philosophies and his views of an Eastman Kodak in transition. Just who is this man who joined Kodak as a quality control engineer at Kodak Park in 1950 and rose to become chairman and chief executive officer? In a moment, the answers as we bring you Eastman Kodak, A View from the Top. Colby Chandler grew up on a farm in Maine. Although he has blossomed in today's business world, many of his roots are still in Maine soil. It was that background that brought his interest in engineering and his education in that field. When he came to Rochester, he bought land with the future in mind, over 100 acres to farm a little and play a little with his 3 tractors and pickup truck. He figures his time spent doing yard work and gardening is roughly equivalent to what others invest in golf.
One would think of this natural setting as really a place to relax and get away from it all. I assume at times, though, you have to think about business when you're out here, and is it sometimes helpful to have this environment to do it?
Yes, sometimes I think I will be working, cutting wood or doing something like that for an hour or more, and realize that I've been thinking about a problem all that time, and going through mechanical motions, but mentally tossing around in my mind a particular thing I'm trying to deal with. That's where the cutting grass with a tractor may look like a very monotonous thing to do, and it is if that's all you're going to do. But my mind is usually doing just as you describe, tossing around ideas, thinking of the alternatives, and thinking through the ultimate consequences.
Sometimes the projects depend upon what you're thinking about. If it's been a peaceful week, maybe you turn to the garden. If it's been a tough day, the backhoe comes out.
Yes.
or something, you get a chance to work a little harder.
I'm sure that's right. I hadn't given it a great deal of conscious thought, but if I am really wrestling hard with something, I'm likely to do something vigorous, like hoe the vegetable garden. Mm-hmm. And that hoeing action releases some of your energy, and in the process, the mind starts working a little bit better. I think the vegetable garden is a significant factor for me because the process that I go through is an exciting process every year. I'm always trying different seeds. Now, the interesting thing is we do not harvest very much from it because as a percent at least of what is there available, and every gardener knows that from experience, that you don't really raise the garden for economic reasons, you do it for something else.
When one is here, there's almost a spiritual feeling just being in this environment, and I recall days a few years back when we shared a church experience together, and you were the chairman of the board of deacons, and I was trying to follow in your footsteps in terms of how you ran meetings and conducted that business. And I'm curious, in this environment and in all that you do and with the busy schedule, what kind of spiritual strength you get that keeps you going each day?
I think that again we all tap different sources of energy, and for me, all of the spiritual strength seems to come through natural sources, and the interaction with people at work is an enormous source of strength. And I think we realize that most people have that same belief, and there is a loneliness that you sense in the eyes of people as they retire or shortly after they retire. And I think what they're missing is that feedback of really a spiritual bond that develops among people.
In a way, your caring of things in this yard is similar to your caring for Eastman Kodak, in that there are seedlings to be planted for perhaps a future generation. There is care to be done to those that are here. There is perhaps a bringing together, as you have done, transplanting the roots of different peoples and different cultures. Do you see any kind of analogy?
Well, you're helping me see it. I must not have been very conscious of it before. I'm sure I wasn't. But I do agree there is a clear analogy. The job of any manager, I always maintain, is planning for the future. And it varies in degrees as to how large a part of that job you are, depending on where you are in an organization. In the job I hold, that is essentially my entire responsibility, I feel, to plan for the future.
What does the future hold for Eastman Kodak? What about jobs, cutbacks, South Africa, Star Wars, the wage dividend? And what will Kodak be like in the 21st century? We'll continue our discussion in a moment. Colby Chandler is comfortable in his home, in which he and his wife Jean have raised 2 daughters and now entertain the grandchildren. They have added touches of Maine everywhere, including Colby's study, his office away from State Street. It was there we talked about Kodak, past, present, and future.
I wonder if we could begin by looking back at the Eastman Kodak as it was when you first joined the workforce there. As you look back on those days and what Kodak was then, how would you compare it to what it is today?
Well, first I would say that the company itself, the heart of the company in terms of its values, the principles on which it operates, have not changed. The company is the same company. We believe in the same thing, and we operate the same way in the same principles. But the world has changed, and so the way we have to conduct our affairs to be compatible with the changed world is different. We have to be more interactive in the marketplace. We have to be more aware of government matters. The matter of doing business outside the United States, which is very important to Kodak, is extremely complex because every nation has its own laws and its own regulations, and we have to learn to deal with those. So I would say we become a more outward-looking company and outwardly interactive.
At what point did you begin to realize that not only was the world changing, but Kodak would have to change in terms of its products, in terms of its future?
I think there's no single point in time where there's a sharp break, but your question is appropriate in terms of an awareness does develop, and it's subliminal at first, and then suddenly you do realize that you have to be proactive about the change. I think many of us go about life in an adaptive fashion, and we adapt instinctively. It's difficult for me to pick a very short period of time, but I think the beginning of the 70s would be the best way I could pinpoint that conscious need that we saw to be more outward-looking and outward interacting.
Part of the change at Kodak, of course, has been the structural reorganization and separate units that are really becoming more independent under the the Kodak umbrella. How is that working, and how do you see the future of that?
It clearly is working well in terms of the progress we are making from the time we started. It's been about a year and 1/2. Organization is a constant evolutionary process. And if you think back over time, any single organization structure at Kodak has not lasted very many years. It's constantly being adapted. And secondly, this organization change has in it the intrinsic concept of reducing the number of levels in a decision process, the number of steps that people must follow through management approvals to get decisions made. It's difficult to change behavior overnight. So it would be correct to say that we're not fully in place with the effectiveness of the new organization that we know is possible. I would say we're perhaps somewhere near 2/3 or 3/4 of the way in place. But I also would say that that last increment is going to be more difficult than the first increment. We have to be creative in how we take the steps from here on. And I'm really referring to the manufacturing and the overseas operations, of how those two functional activities interact with these business units, and how we can have them a part of the same team and have them be responsive.
Much of this year's annual report talks about preparing for the 21st century, looking ahead to the 21st century. What will Kodak be like in the 21st century?
I think that the Kodak in the future of the next century will be first clearly recognizable as the same company. Secondly, it will still be very strong and have strong markets in what we call silver halide photography, the photography of color pictures and motion pictures, microfilm, those things that come from sensitized film. But there will be, in addition to that, a significant sector that will have grown and will be supplying amateurs and professionals with pictures made by electronic photography. Beginning of the next century, the company will be a major factor in the world in terms of life sciences. Our skills will be well developed at that time. We will have products, I believe, that will be significant assets to enhancing the quality of life. And thirdly, I believe we will be recognized as a full participant in what we call image management, image information management, the work of text preparation and text editing. And I guess there's a fourth area, and that's the chemicals, fibers, and plastics. I see our strength as world leadership there, especially in the field of plastics.
We want to touch on the two items that are going to be coming up at the shareholders meeting. First of all, the question of South Africa.
I am struck by the congruence of views among all of these constituencies that lead to what it seems to me is a pretty logical conclusion, and that is that the withdrawal of American multinationals from South Africa would be a totally destabilizing effect. And as a result of that destabilization, those employees of those companies personally would suffer in a tragic way, but so would thousands and millions of others, because it would be probably a very serious disaster. It's a major commitment for us, a commitment to try to be a stabilizing force. And the truth, obviously, is that you can only do that so long. And the question is, how long can we continue to follow this type of course without seeing enough good results? Withdrawal would come properly, in my view, as a final indication that we've done what we can and it's not working anymore.
Some shareholders will also be calling upon the company to re-examine its involvement with government contracts in the so-called Star Wars defense system.
our role in working for any government contracts is, over the years, characterized as being responsive where we have unique skills, and they generally are in the field of optics. Our feeling is that our government has the resources to make those judgments, and the commander-in-chief and those that work for him have the responsibility to do what, in their judgment, is best for the country.
The loss of instant photography, of course, dominated much of the news the past year or so. Do you think Kodak could have done anything differently to prevent what did happen?
Absolutely not. There's no question in my mind that we did everything possible to fully live by our policy, which is to not infringe the valid patents of others. I think that it will not be missed. I think that from both the financial and the product capability point of view, it's not a great loss. There are, of course, the one-time costs that we are incurring for a shutdown, and that's a major blow in this year, and it isn't the way you would normally go out of a business.
With Kodak having to trim the workforce, become a leaner, more efficient corporation, obviously it must be a tough time for employees, wondering if they're going to be able to survive at Kodak. What kinds of messages are you getting from them, and what are you giving back in return?
The message is something like, why doesn't somebody tell us, or why doesn't somebody listen? And if we only knew, or why don't you ask us and maybe we can help solve the problems. The management process must deal with problems of survival of the company, which means that you're dealing with issues that must be resolved in a way that they are favorable to the largest number of people, employees and share owners and the community people where we live and work. But it's very difficult anywhere in life, whether it's Eastman Kodak or the government or anywhere else, to find a case where a decision which is best for the majority or the largest number, but still does not inflict some disadvantage or harm to some individual. There's no doubt in my mind that Kodak has always been far and away much more sensitive to these matters than other companies.
I guess the tight-knit Kodak family that has been so much a traditional part of this community has to change a little bit to survive. Does that make that transition a little tougher for not only the Kodak people, but for this community, I guess?
Yeah, it does, and I do hear that from employees, the questioning and the concern as to whether we're not the same company. And that's why I always stress that the company is the same company. We do hold the same values and the same principles, and we are as concerned as ever about individual welfare.
When you talk about job incentives and the will to work and keep working, one of the big incentives at Kodak, of course, over the years has been the wage dividend.
I think I did not communicate very well on the wage dividend. First, I let it be included among the cost improvement program items, when that was not the intention at all. We wanted to study ways to improve the formula, to relate wage dividend to the earnings performance of the company. It seems appropriate to consider that. We haven't made a decision to do that.
What about the types of production jobs that Kodak is going to be able to offer?
The skills today are very different. They do not involve finger dexterity as much as they used to. They involve conceptual understanding of how systems work more than they ever did before. And there's no question in my mind that the American workforce is well up to this challenge. It's not an insurmountable challenge at all. People seem to, in my experience, rise to meet your expectations. If you make yourself valuable enough to someone else, you'll always have a job.